Hi, Stephen. How you doing? Fine, Jerry. How are you tonight, baby? Oh, pretty good. What can I get you, hon? How about a draft? Well, this is Thursday night, and at Travelers, our special on Thursday is draft beer and pizza night. For $4, you get all the draft beer you can drink and all the pizza you can eat from 6 to midnight. That sounds good. I'll take it. All right, baby. Here you go. Enjoy yourself.
This was a time in Pittsburgh's history where it was actually illegal to serve a known homosexual an alcoholic drink.
The Lucky After Dark project began as an excavation of an after-hours nightclub in East Liberty. From that time forward, I started to dig further back and discovered that the material we pulled out of there had a longer history to it that taps into a different way of looking at sort of gay and lesbian history in Pittsburgh and the way that we negotiate sexual identity. It was dark and dirty and full of trash, but when we started to wade through it and separate what was there and kind of meticulously bag, cigarette packs and membership cards and police reports, it really sort of hit me that this wasn't just a random array of materials. This was a history, and there really could be a lot more to it than just a space that needs cleaned. It's a history in the making.
The amount of visual material we have is truly extraordinary from one place in time. Over time, I think my role has been to sort of address larger historiographical issues and how the project fits into larger narratives that have evolved in gay and lesbian history.
I spent most of my time cataloging various materials, all of it like ephemera, cocktail napkins, matchbooks, eventually photographs, and taking oral history interviews to start to contextualize what this material really was. And about a year down the road, I started to understand that there was a way to visualize this history in a way that a public can interact with and contribute back to.
It's a Pittsburgh history, it's a labor history, it's a social history, addresses major issues in gay historiography that need to be contextualized and localized.
We needed the money to build it in the first place. The huge wall panels and building the exhibition tables and printing the photographs back onto slides like they were shown in the 70s and 80s cost a modest amount of money for an exhibition. And so we looked to the Pittsburgh Foundation as someone that might be interested in reconciling some of this history and repatriating some of the material.
As somebody who's been involved in gay issues for 35 years, it's just so different. We're not fighting uphill. We're accepted by the community, by the foundations, as really providing a valid kind of historical lens on the past. This was a period of enormous outmigration for the city. There was the outmigration of labor. The city shrunk in half. And there was also the gay migrations that occurred. People went to Washington or San Francisco or New York. People who chose to stay here negotiated their sexuality in a different manner. They were in a small city. They remained connected to their families, their communities, their neighborhoods, their work. And so what we see in Pittsburgh is a different form of sexual community and identity.
Robert Johns, universally known as Lucky, for about 30 years ran the Travelers Club, the House of Tilden, the TC Club, and these were social clubs, fraternal organizations, and they developed a sense of community among gay and lesbians in Pittsburgh.
I met Lucky when he first opened the Real Luck Cafe, or Lucky's down in the Strip. He was an enormously charming man. He was a raconteur. He had a lot of well-polished stories like any good bar owner. This was somebody who really did feel that he was helping sustain a community. And he did. He funded things like picnics. He also seeded most of the social services that helped the LGBT community. I called him in one moment the Pope of gay Pittsburgh, and he really was. I would say over 90% of what we're exhibiting came from Lucky. Lucky was a shutterbug. So he took lots of photos in his clubs. He would show them at the clubs. People knew he was taking photos. A lot of them, are of performers, but there were also a lot of just people in the clubs. And so that's why we focused on him for this exhibit, because the visual material was so rich.
It was important to make this exhibition because we reintroduced this material. It becomes a part of the city again, and those connections that might have been lost from the devastation of the AIDS epidemic. And so this exhibition is it's that bridge. It's building a bridge through time and space. That sounds like sci-fi, but it's building a bridge through time. It allows people to have a conversation about a life that's already become a way of the past.
This isn't just a gay history, it's a Pittsburgh history, but it's a Pittsburgh that very few people knew existed. This is a collection of documents and photographs and videotapes that show a community in formation and show a world that existed away from the mainstream community.
When the exhibit starts to come alive, our opening night, we had over 100 people. I think we had 160 at full count. There's no air conditioning. There's slide projectors throwing off heat left and right. And there's a sort of dull roar of Bette Midler and disco and chatting and cans opening and people just saying, "Oh my God, that's Jimmy." People started to recognize each other in the photographs, and there was this intense feeling of collective memory. And I think that that's part of it that taps into the idea of feeling like a club. The exhibition is now over.
Harrison had talked to Scott Noxon, who was a local bar owner and very instrumental in the community. He gave us another gift. We did not plan on using that for the exhibit, but when we approached the foundation and said we wanted to catalog this and we wanted to turn it into some kind of documentation that would be available, at least initially online, and to maintain it, they were very enthusiastic about it. So the Noxon gift really allows us to continue this project into the future.
I realized that I needed to catalog the exhibit because I found this material in personal collections, basements, attics, paper bags in the back of the closet. I spent the past 2 years doing was attaching names to them. How do you recognize who's in this photograph and how do we know how many times they show up? That's the information that makes this move from a photo archive to a document of history. And we need to catalog it so that it can grow beyond myself, that it can become a project that's a resource to the city. And with the catalog that we're building through the grant from the Scott Noxon Fund at the Pittsburgh Foundation, that'll become accessible.
It's an exploration of a demimonde or a twilight world that no longer exists. It tries to touch upon both the discrimination that gay and lesbian people face, but also how they celebrated their own lives within the confines of a world that was essentially very homophobic. And I would like to walk away from this as a celebration.
I think that it changes the way I look at my own place in the city. You know, I'm a gender non-conforming person, and I can look back and see that that wasn't exactly something new. I feel like I'm having to start everything new. It's not a matter of always making space for yourself. You can rely on history and see it as a way to place yourself in the present with confidence and with an arsenal of family and understanding and knowledge behind you.
I think what the catalog and the exhibit do is they give young LGBT people context. That their stories are not individual contexts, that people have come before them, people have made the same decisions in different historical moments, and that other people's struggles inform their own. And that's enormously useful for anybody who's dealing with issues of sexuality.
The sort of interactions that fostered this growing sense of community, that's just as important as political engagement 20 years later. And I think the exhibit accomplishes that by its interactivity, the fact that we're not handing down a history, we're asking to collect it.
Where else can you go in town and drink from 6 till 12 midnight for only $5? The holiday? No, the holiday charges $6. What about the Norway? No, the Norway charges $6. Come to Travelers where they only charge $5.
Hi, I'm Mike, and on my Wednesday nights off at 9 o'clock, I come to Tilden 2 for Punk Rock Night with live groups at 10. That's Tilden 2, Wednesday nights at 9, live groups at 10.